So I'm coming from a company named Copulation. They hired me 8 months ago to do the re-architecture of the Node.js stuff. So, how many people hate callbacks? So they're often common in Node.js. So everything is about the callbacks. Have you experienced before with basically hard testing code? The example what I asked our colleague here, how do you test this stuff? It's really hard. How many? Do you even test Node.js code? What do you do as a testing usually? Unit testing? One? Okay. So, and the reason why I choose to build a new framework is basically when I look at all of them. So I look at Express. How many people using Express and use in production? Okay. Salad? Happy? Any of them? Do you know what is the major problem of them? What is the major problem of all of this? They're not testable. And I will tell you why in a short. So, because there is no dependency injection inside. When you think about, so you have some module which includes 1, 2, or 3 modules we are required. And when you take a look, when you want to do and include just this module and test one function inside of it, how would you do it? Without including all 3 libraries which you are requiring inside. You cannot do it. It's because by default, when you load stuff with the required, it's immediately there. So, and it's cached. So there is no fresh state on each other test. There is basically, you're not able to do this. So, for example, here you can see you load the requirements in Mvcjs, so which brings you back one component, and it's only dependency injection. And all stuff other you load over the Mvcjs itself. So you say, okay, deload fs, deload etat, core, any library.
Can you zoom in a bit?
Yeah. How would I do it? Yeah, like this. So you load any library. So over the Mvcjs itself, which is basically the instance of this, is just a dependency injection. And first, what it does, it checks if there is something what is registered in the system, because you have an aliases, something like you can provide custom aliases, custom components, custom names. When you think about when you need to test this, it's really easy because you can provide a custom object, and I will show you in a second how to do it. So, for example, when you go to your tests, and when you want to test one controller, for example, when you take a look, I'm saying demock. What demock it does, in this case I set the alias, which is just a representation of the path to some path. And then you say, okay, loaded categories, which is file.
Increase font size.
Huh? Yeah, sorry. I will do it all the time, sorry. The question is how to do it in this. Control Shift A. Command Shift A.
And type decrease.
Okay, nice, thank you. Command Shift A. All good? So when you take a look, you still load your components, which is in this case categories controller. And for all your packages like promise, type.js, error, fs, whatever it is, you provide your own mock. And what is really good, it each test, it's giving you a refresh state. So each time, because this is called in before each, it provides you a clean state. So it's all the time, and on each mock, basically on each execution of the mock, and the component itself which you're calling, I'm removing the model itself from the cache. And this gives you possibility actually to test everything, because you can test the chunk of your application, you can test any function, anything, and you can mock anything. And in the agile world, when you think about that you want to test everything, you cannot do it if you don't have something like this. And if you want to really have really stable stuff without knowing if something will break on production, because this is also not just the unit testing, the integration test, for example. What is the integration test? So integration test is when you have multiple components and you just mock, for example, a data. So you want to just mock the data and you want to see if the complete request is compiled correctly with some mock data on the server. And you can do it because you can provide your own component, your own service, and basically then you can get the result of the compiled version of the template. And when you think about, it's really giving you a power to do really testable code. And this is one of the reasons why I choose to basically build a new framework, because because our system were really unstable. What unstable means that, for example, if something breaks on API or there are missing field, how much people really with Express or any other framework experience that your application basically when breaks somewhere that they stop the process? Do you have this on production? No?
You just restart.
Okay. Huh?
You just restart.
Yeah, you restart it. But that should not happen. This is what should not happen. You should always have a failover. You should always basically, and when you debug your stuff, you should see where's the error, where it happens immediately.
Sorry.
Yeah.
Because I think that testing is not really a framework's. We don't need the test framework. We test our code. So if we write our code in a decoupled way, so it can be tested. The Node already give us the possibility of testing framework, already give us the possibility to test.
That's not true.
Okay.
Because
Full stop.
false statement. It's because when you always need to have a test to prove that your chunk of the code is workable. And why you need the unit testing? Because you have.
I'm not against unit testing. What I mean is that we structure our code in a way that it can be tested because with Node it still other things can be mocked. Mocking is not a problem. Mocking is just
It is because when you use typical application, so when you use for example version, so this is the old code legacy. When you do this, how would you mock this?
Yeah, there's a point. The code is not good. Yeah, but your framework doesn't solve this old legacy code problem. Because you need to write new code, I guess.
No, because you cannot solve the problem. How would you test this? It's usual way how you include the stuff on the node. And how can you test this? The answer is you cannot. That's the point. Yes?
Do you know rewire JS?
Rewire?
Which, what you've shown so far is basically something what rewire does.
Okay.
Without replacing the node's own requirement.
Okay.
So you write normal require statements in all the modules, but in the tests you can actually use rewire
Okay.
to set this module loading and replace modules by mocks, for instance.
And it works normal? Okay. I didn't know for this.
So
But this is not the reason why I only did the framework. So one of the reasons was testing, of course. The other point is when you have some structure. So in any framework, basically when you take a look, there is no chunk of the code, so you have some kind of, so they all say that they're MVC, but they're actually not, because you just have a routing system and you have a callback and you do some logic of the code there and you return the, basically the compiled template. And here in Mvcjs, you can really have a structure of the code because you have a library which is called type.js, which is also built by me, which is providing you basically the way how can you inherit stuff. What that means, I can use this? Yeah, so, how to use this? Okay, doesn't matter. So what this means, that for example, you inherit from controller itself, which is parent controller. And then you can execute this super. What this super does, it executes the parent function and returns the result, which is in this case promise. And basically all the stack, it's written in what system expects to be its promise. So this gives you possibility to really write the code and to have a proper inheritance. So, and to reuse the code. So when you take a look, all our basically actions, so it has before each. What before each means? It will be executed before each action. What is before index? So this is one index action which is defined in the routing. It could be defined in the dynamic routing. And then you call your module, find, and then you return the promise. And then you have some logic. You compile your stuff inside of the action index, and you call the render file, and you say, okay, render my template. So template paths and all the stuff, what basically the path, you can define in the environment variables. And you can see that you provide your own locals to the template. And then the system does everything for you. You don't have to do anything else. So if you want to have other response, like response type, like Ajax, then you just define a different header, and it will do the job for you. So with this system, same. So we also build the widgets, something what is basically a real widget. So you have a widget. Wait a second. And you have a logic in the widget itself. You have some hook, which is basically be executed by the hook where you have to exchange the data. And you have the render, where you do some logic where you also have to do inside of the widget itself. And then you just call it in the template widget and the name of the widget. In this case, for example, when you go to home and index, you can see widget voucher stop. And it will deliver everything for you. So the only stuff what you have to do, you have to define where to load it, so in which controller, and you have to execute the action before inside of the before action, for example, or inside of the action itself. So you have to say widget hooks handle, and then you can provide custom data. This is a bit confusing because our guys, but it's providing the reference to the widget itself. Other stuff what it's doing for you, it's clearing the references for you as long as you stay inside of the controller and inside of the type.js library. And when request hookup and goes and everything compiles, it will clear all the references for you. So this means no memory leaks. Third stuff, it has a type checking at runtime.
Sorry, I got it. So this is a framework that you have also the templating.
Yeah, we have a templating which we used. It's called Mvcjs. It's based on basically famous the syntax is the same as the Twig.js, so which is which is inherited from the Django, and the syntax is well known. So it has a type checking at runtime. This gives you, when you take a look, gives you much stable API, because if you have some object and you have some methods and you define the types inside of the object itself, when you want to basically create something, in this case the best case would be core. When you take a look, you have to define all of this, and when you overwrite this anywhere, so if I say here, for example, in any of those actions, that this locals equal false, and if I defined that is an object, at the runtime it will throws you an exception immediately during the development time. And this helps you a lot because, at least by my opinion, it gives you more clearer API what you have to do. Then you cannot do the mistake there. So it's component based. What does it mean? All the components in the system are singletons, and you can register any component in the system and deliver it during the Bootstrap time. So, for example, in application environment, you can define all your components, and you can provide any component, and you can override any component in the system. You can implement your own controller, you can implement your own routing way, you can implement your own HTTP service, which gives you possibility to do server-side requests, what we are doing to do the testing. Because we provide a mock of the data, and we get the compiled version, and we just basically can do the checking if the compiled version has some expectations, which is when you take a look in testing perspective, it's really awesome, at least by my opinion. And I don't know if any other framework is giving you this possibility to actually do that. It has dynamic routing, so like most of the frameworks, you can define any route, and you can use any expressions, and it's delivered in the controller itself. So this will be delivered as a parameter. You can define basically any regular expression here, and if it's matched by this regular expression, then this route will be executed. And it also has a dynamic router, so you can gather stuff from your database, and you can put some rules, and basically the way how can you want to create URL, and how do you actually want to parse the request. So here you can see that we call the model, we hook up, and then we resolve it based on some logic. So the framework is fully testable, which means that you can do unit test, end-to-end test, integration test. Basically, the unit testing, I think that is really important for developer itself, because this is not just for me. So if I have a team, we have 3 teams which are working on this, and each team have average from 4 to 6 developers, 3 to 6 developers. So, and when somebody changed the unit test and I change the code inside of the controller or any basically component, test will fail. Because you have to either update the test or say, okay, I did something wrong. So, and you test everything. You test functions, you test, for example, so the real approach and the good approach is that you actually test everything. So you test if your function is executed, you test if not just the result are expected. You have to test, for example, inside of, let's find some good example. For example, spies. You can inside of the context, because you provide the context to the function itself, which is In this case, SEO tag, and you call the call and you provide a different context, which means that you override this inside of the function itself. And when you take a look, then you can provide the custom functions, custom object, custom data. And you can see if this function is actually executed. And if I change this function and I remove it, this test will fail. And I think this is really important, that you actually know step by step what I change in my code. And that other developer cannot break it. If they break the test, they have to even update the test or change the code. This gives us more stable environment, and you will see afterwards what I mean with this. So, how Mvcjs works? It's not like all classical frameworks. They load everything in memory, and it serves everything from memory. So, you have environment variables and components, which is bootstrapped immediately when your application starts. So this is MVC framework. It has a bootstrap process. It loads all the components and stuff what is required for initialization of the application itself. And all other stuff are loaded asynchronously, which means that you can catch any error if it's not bootstrap error, and you can display syntax error inside of the browser. And to demonstrate you, I will do it right now. So, I have my application started on localhost 9000, and this is the home page. Inside of the home page, I have an action index, and if I do this and I run it, you will see it immediately. You will see it exactly where it is. You have a stack unscripted token and basically home controller 100. During the development, this is really important. It shows you exactly where system fails. Yep.
How does it load fresh code? Like it's using the VM module or?
Sorry, can you repeat the question?
How does it load the code for Mvcjs?
It's when request comes. So what it happens is that it first parses the request, and then it searches for the lookups. Where should I point this request? To which controller? To which module? Because you also have modularity, so you can build a micro application, port it into the system, and put it on some route, and it works. And basically, how it works: when request is parsed and it sees first if it has some hooks or not, then it will, if it finds the route, it will search for the controller, and it will load the controller in memory. And when you think about it, only has to load this controller once, because afterwards it cached.
So is it doing the require with the try catch around? Or?
Yes, it's not the try to catch, it's all promise chains, which means that it's automatically cached error, because they are wrapped inside of the promise. Because all of this is promise chain. And when you take a look at the code, there is no callbacks. That's why I asked who had callbacks. There is no callback in the code. And this gives you a really stable system, because first, you don't have to look where you're in a tree. Second, you have immediate debug case. You can see immediately what is wrong. And it's really, and it's easy to learn. So all my developers and colleagues really know how to use the system. The really thing what we didn't have time to do is to write the documentation completely. But we will work on it. So, what are components? Components are host set, so-called application components that provide different services for processing requests. So, and they are usually run at the, actually they are always instantiated at the Bootstrap, and all of them are basically singleton objects. And the most important thing, all stuff inside of the framework itself, it's localized. Nothing is global state. So there is no possibility or risk that you will have a global code, or when you will change something that something else will break, which is really important for the stable system. For example, core router is component responsible for routing web requests to the appropriate controllers or modules. And the good point, since this is dependency injection, you can always change your router. If you don't like the implementation, you can write anything. So I think that's a really nice feature. So each request is an instance of new request, which points to some module or controller, or you have a request hook which you do something with it. And then, which I already explained, it does the lookup in the routes, and then it loads the controller and create a new instance of the controller. And when the request ends, and what is important stuff, what was really a bit strange for the developers first time to understand, that each time if you want some asynchronous stuff to basically execute and the data will be there on time, you have to write a promise. Because all of this are promise chains. So this is one structure, how it looks. You can see clearly structure. You have core controller, you have home controller, you have widget hooks, you have models, you have templates. And even templates are inherited in n ways. What does it mean? So you can provide inside of your application inside of the template 1 to n, and it doesn't have any performance issue. Why? Because when it's cached through on production, it precompiles all the templates. It tokenizes completely the templating engine and gives you the basically JavaScript version of the templates. And you can, when you think about it, when you need to do something like this, it's really powerful, because this is what gives us possibility to do something like this. So this is the same application, and when I remove the syntax error and I do the refresh, wait a second. No. When I do the refresh of application, you can see there is other application, and it's have a different data, different database, different logic, different components. And even with this widget system, you can, and the best way it is also that you can say what to provide. You just do the hooks and just the definitions what to use on certain environment. So you don't have to change the code at all. You can just provide different aliases, different logic, and different way how to hook. And I think this is really powerful, because we can extend the system, and because when you see that this is all the templates. So let me close this, sorry, it's a big. So when you take a look, so this is the old system, for example, which we built, which is around 35 applications from this system. And each system has, some of them have same functionality, some of them have different functionality, and you can see the teaming. A lot of teaming works based on the configuration, and the lookup works based on configuration, and you can always inherit it without a problem. You can. So basically, the old structure is the same. So when you say where it should look up, so if it doesn't find in team D, it will search, for example, if you define an environment in team C. Yes?
Was Mvcjs created with that use case in mind, or was that just something that...
It's created with this use case in mind, because we have a lot of problems. We had 35 repositories, and imagine how is that to maintain and to find out where is something in which template. We have 35 different applications, and it's really hard to maintain it. And then you need to have some certain level of inheritance to actually accomplish this, because otherwise it's really hard. And imagine just that you have to push something to 35 repositories, yeah, which was the case before.
But if you're creating an application that doesn't need this functionality, I think it's not going to stand in your way. Or
Sorry, can you
like if you create a website that doesn't need to be this configurable,
yeah.
like the framework still just works and you don't need to do extra stuff.
No, you don't need to, you can use any case. For example, when you take a look at my blog, and it's built completely in JavaScript on Mvcjs, you can do anything. And this is even with the modulus example, because I can use this model port on some other application and port it on different route, and I don't have to do anything to work. And I just have to say where to connect, and I just change the configuration, and that's it. I don't have to do anything. And it also, each model, for example, if you need this functionality, has own templates, and it lookups goes to the model itself. So, views, as I mentioned, is a Mvcjs, which colleague asked us, and how it works. So you can extend anytime. So you can put multiple tokens. You can extend the template energy as you want. As you can see, we did it for the widgets, for example. And then how it works, it will first look up from the theme paths. System has an aliases which you define on the environment, or you can always change them dynamically. And if it doesn't find any theme name, it will search in the default theme, and it doesn't find the templating, it will throw 404 error. And it will show what is wrong and where is missing. So what is wrong with the template and where he tried to search. For the model, we use Mongoose library. You can choose anything. You can provide, since it has dependency injection, you can do whatever you want. You don't have to use it. And anyways, it's just a component. You, on the Bootstrap time here, what you saw, you define inside of your environment, you define basically which components you want to use and where you want to load them from. So we had comparison from the version 3 and version 2 app, which was first was built on Express. Afterward, it was built on some custom implementation of Express, which was even faster. And we saw that everything was closed, coupled. We had the runtime errors, which was so weird errors. Even if you basically use process and use to basically serve the uncached errors, you still doesn't know, basically, in some cases, what is going on. And all the controllers, what we had, it was really bad. It has some kind of shared state. And then we have bugs from mutable state. And it was really bad to test because there is no way to provide, at least I didn't know it. Colleague said that there is one library which is actually doing this, but I didn't test it. And this is, for example, our current worldwide loading times. So each application has some approximately 70 requests, and you can see that full-time loading, it takes something about around second and 2 seconds. And when we come to the stability, this is when we deploy the Mvcjs. And you can see the big drop here with the same response time from the various servers. So how the pinger works, he has servers all around the world, and he pings your server whenever it is. And from the same, basically, distance, we have more than 50% of loading time. And on average, our loading times are 50 millisecond responses. Depends where it is, the server, because, for example, in India, we are serving from the Pacific area on Amazon, and there is network layer, it's a bit different, and it travels more than to the server than it is. And you can see here that we have only one, and this is just because of the deployment issue, which we already also solved. And this is also one other example. And yeah, that's basically it. Any questions? Any impressions?
One question. Is this open source?
Yeah, it's open source.
Do you have information how many other companies or projects using this?
We are using in production on 35 applications. And nobody else using it because we built this 3 months ago.
Okay. So from what ground you are building on? So you use some of your own library, or you have something?
No, I built everything. All this idea how the flow works and how can we actually catch the errors and display and make life easier to the developers itself. It's designed by me.
So it's built from ground up.
Yeah.
And then it took you 3 months.
No.
Yourself.
No. We were the actual first version of the application I hacked in 2.5 weeks. So the framework itself, workable framework for presentation. Then we were rewriting the application, which usually they did the one rewrite from one application to other application 3 months, and we did it afterwards in a month and a half, which is 50%, which is really bad. Yeah.
Did you try porting something instead of rewriting it to the framework?
I was looking what I can reuse, and yeah, we are using libraries like Promises, like Mongoose. I didn't try to reinvent the wheel. I just want to, I use what I can. So we have libraries which are basically like eTag, like, so we have 6 dependencies of other libraries. But all other stacks, when I look at how it works, I couldn't use it because I clearly want to make everything testable and basically easier to test.
More questions? Igor.
Yeah.
Great work. Thank you very much.
Thank you.